Great flies don't need to be complicated to tie, nor do they need to take a long time. All they really have to do is catch fish, which the pattern that I'll show you how to tie today, the Herl Nymph, does. It's easy to say that simple things don't work. For example, consider all the people that want to lose weight and insist on going to a gym or trying crazy diets, when instead they could just go outside and walk regularly. In a similar way, as fishermen, we tend to gravitate towards the flies that are complicated or flashy, thinking that somehow that complexity will lead us to catching more fish. And in fact, the opposite I found is true. Simpler flies, also known as guide flies, tend to do a better job at catching fish. And the fly that I'm going to share with you today, the Herl Nymph, is simple. It's only 4 ingredients. But the best thing about it is that it catches fish. And I think you'd agree that after all, that's what matters at the end of the day. Just talk about the fly itself. I first learned about this fly from Morgan Lyle's excellent book, Simple Flies. And in that book, Morgan talks about how he was on Facebook and he saw a photo from Bob Clouser. Clouser, as you know, is the preeminent fly fisher who has created several famous patterns, including the Clouser minnow. Morgan reached out to him, asked him, hey, what is this pattern that I'm looking at? And Bob Clouser said that, well, that's the Herl Nymph, and it might be the best one in the box. And so with those kind of credentials, it made me really curious and want to tie this pattern a few years ago. And I have to say, in my experience of being on the water, I echo what Bob and Morgan have said about the fly, that it is an excellent fly to use. So now that we've talked about the fly itself, let's go ahead and tie up a couple. And the first thing we're going to do is wrap some lead-free wire around the hook. Now these wraps do need to be pretty close together, like that. And we're going to go up most of the hook itself. All right, and then I will go ahead and snip the ends off, like so. And I kind of just mash those little bits that are left down. And then what we're going to do next is we're going to wrap the thread around the lead-free wire. So we'll start our thread here, tie in a half hitch knot, like so, cut off the tag end, and then cover that lead-free wire and thread. Again, depending on the size thread and the diameter that you're using, this may take quite a few wraps. And what I like to do when I get to the end of the lead-free wire there is just do a couple wraps at the bottom to hold it in place. Go ahead and go back up. Adjust that hook just a little. There we go. Or maybe not. All right. So what we're doing is we're putting the thread all the way down at the lead-free wire there. And then what I'm doing is taking my first 2 strands of peacock herl. We're going to go ahead and tie those in. I know I said 3 in the recipe, but I'll explain why we're just using 2 here. So we'll tie those in, snip off the tag ends like that. And it's probably a good idea to throw in a half hitch there. I'll bring the wire back just a little bit to get it out of the way. And then we'll go ahead and start to wind the peacock herl around the hook shank like this. As you can see, it does a really nice job of covering it. But as we get closer here, you can also see that we are probably going to run out of peacock herl. And you know, when I first started fly tying, I would try to use up all the herl to try not waste any. But one thing I've learned is that herl is pretty delicate, so it's better to go ahead and waste some and be able to tie it in instead of having it snip off on you or break. So we'll go ahead and cut those. We'll throw another 1/2 hitch knot in here, and then we'll use our 3rd strand of peacock herl to finish out the fly. So we'll tie that in like that. There we go. And then we'll just go ahead and, of course it snaps on me. All right, that's okay. That happens. So we'll go ahead and tie this in. And I'm just wrapping it around the lead-free wire. Again, getting close to the end here. So I'm going to go ahead and grab those tag ends, wrap them a couple times. I like to wrap both in front of the herl and behind it. We'll go ahead and snip those off. Throw in a 1/2 hitch knot. And then finally, we'll use our whip finisher tool to finish tying the thread. This one's moving around a lot on me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's go ahead and tie up another Herl Nymph. And what I've done is I've actually switched out to slightly thicker thread. The thread in the first fly was a little bit thin, and this one is Unistretch 1X in black. Start by putting our lead-free wire on. And we're just wrapping it around the hook. Again, these wraps are pretty close together. As we get closer to the end of the wire, I find that sometimes you have to use your thumb to kind of push them together. And then we'll snip off the tag ends. Like that. Then from here, we'll go ahead and tie in some thread. Again, for this one, I am using slightly thicker thread than I did on the first one, because I found that the thread was a little too thin. It wasn't covering very well. Snip off the tag end of your thread. And then what we're doing here is covering that lead-free wire in thread. Like so. And as I get down to the end here, I like to just throw a couple wraps there. So now that we've gone ahead and covered that with thread, we will go ahead and tie in our peacock herl. I am tying in the herl at the stem part because that's the strongest, so that hopefully there it won't break on us as we're wrapping it around the hook. Snip these off. Go ahead and bring our thread up here. And then start to wind the herl around the wire and the hook. again, makes for a very nice body on the fly. But as we get further along using the Herl, we have to use a few more wraps each time to sort of keep that thickness uniform. And I don't want to use all of this Herl up, because as I get to the end, that Herl will actually get very thin and usually will break on me. So I'm going to go ahead and tie this off, a couple wraps in front, a couple wraps behind the Herl. We'll snip that off. And as usual, just want to throw a 1/2 inch knot in there to save things. And I will go ahead and tie in a couple more strands of peacock Herl. Like so. Cut those off. And we'll wrap this peacock Herl around the hook to finish out this fly. Sometimes it does get away from you. That is okay. 1 or 2 more wraps here. You know, one of the things that I've had to learn on fly tying is that you always want to leave yourself just a little bit of room right before that hook eye, so that you have some room to finish the fly. So we'll go ahead and use our whip finish here. 1, 2, 3. I usually like to do about 5 or 6. Make sure it's tight. And there we have the Herl Nymph. We're using here is some lead-free wire. And what we're going to do is just go ahead and wrap that around the hook. These threads, in a similar way, as fishermen, we tend to gravitate towards flies. So I've shown you how to tie the Herl Nymph today, and I would encourage you to take some time to tie up a few for yourself. And then go ahead and take those flies out on the water. And I think you'll find that whether it's in life or in fishing, the very best things are often simple.